Welcome to Mindshock. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Mindshock Logic Olympics Round 4, possibly also competing, in addition to listening. Here on Mindshock Logical Olympics, anyone can compete. Anyone in the chat can compete and sharpen their logical debating skills, attempting not to fall for any logical fallacies, utilizing deductive reasoning, critical thinking, and intelligent argumentation. That's the goal here. And everyone is competing for prizes, which will be announced at a much later date. We have many rounds to go. But all points carry over to the following round. So our current leaders here over the previous 3 rounds have been Prophet C with 2 points, Ethan W with 2 points in the lead. So they are the gold medalists at the moment. QCZ, silver position with 1 point, and Sphinx Bear and Pinto Sack tied for bronze. All points carry over. You do not have to compete in each and every round, but your points will still carry over to the following round. Here's how all of this works. Basically, anyone can compete. So volunteers in the chat can volunteer in the order that they volunteer is the order they compete in. I will give either a for or against position, and then there will be approximately 1 to 2 minutes during which the competitor has the opportunity to present their argument, either for or against, which I will determine. Now, the goal is not to use lifelines, not to go search on Google, so we have to keep the space of time quite small. And after I call time, I mean, this is kind of like boxing. You're not going to be saved by the bell or cut off, so to speak. So if you're in the middle of typing out your responses in the chat, I won't cut you off. I'll wait till you finish your line of reasoning and arguments. Then I'll go over them. If they are logically fallacious, you will not get any points. If they're semi-decent, you get half a point. If it's a very good argument, you get a full point. And that carries on for the entire round. If there is a tie in this particular round, then there is a sudden death tiebreaker round, in which case both of 2 or 3 or however many people are tied, they will simultaneously defend or rebut a position, either for or against. I will name who is for and against a particular argument, and they will simultaneously go. So those are the rules. Hopefully you guys have checked out the previous round so you know how all of this works. And we can all develop more logic and reason in a world where it's quickly going extinct. If you want to help support the podcast, help support these efforts to prevent the world from completely spiraling into illogical lunacy, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the chat that way. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. All right, let me catch up here. So just a couple of news bulletins. All of the Steven Seagal podcasts have been restored, so they should all be visible in the live tab on the channel. There should be 10 parts of the Steven Seagal podcast. Apparently, YouTube had some trouble identifying fair use. Also, sometimes there will be a delay from the announced time of a live stream. Again, it appears ever since I did those occult NASA patches in a live stream, this channel has been flagged in some capacity. All right, let's see. Malcolm was in here early. I wrote a poem, I'm still learning. When Craig debates, he portrays himself as an arrogant protagonist. Using a bit of simple logical analysis is the catalyst to dismantling these inaccurate globe earth fanaticists. All the word salad fallacies and absurd magical gravity, it has me concerned with Craig's sanity and learning capacity. I can't fathom his inadequacies. He lacks the facts to think rationally. When you are deprived of humanity, is an eye for an eye insanity? Is Craig the type of guy that would fight and die for principality? The trash he speaks is a tragedy, but he might actually be an actor genius. Craig might be working for the flat earthers trying to wake up all the actual sheeple. To do this, you'd have to act deceitful and perhaps at times a tad bit preschool. Attacking empirical facts shows he lacks the stats to chat with flat earth people. It seems that common sense is not so common in this instance. Is coincidence just short for all their cognitive dissonance? Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance, but what's the difference when all these fools are so insignificant? Get the picture, it's right in front of your eyes, try to explain it. Constant fallacious argumentations, ad hominem attack in each statement. The state took your mind and replaced it to reside inside this matrix. Not knowing that your mind has been taken, so open your eyes and awaken, or you'll be confined and complacent as you comply with enslavement. Giving flat earth flyers to science deniers. Rather change their mindsets than resort to violence. Not sure they're trying. Are their thoughts really rising? Of course they're blinded, never taught or guided. I'm bored, so I am writing. That was very interesting, Malcolm. Very, very interesting. Mr. 1-to-1, Bruce, I think you should give us a day at least to train on the subjects, just like in the actual Olympics. If any old fatty could take part with no training, it wouldn't be called the Olympics. Well, here's the thing. It's almost, I would make this more akin to, let's say, you're boxing in the Olympics. You might not know who your opponent is. So your prep time is basically studying logic, just like a boxer might study their techniques, slipping, bobbing, weaving, jabbing, or uppercutting, but they're not necessarily going to know which opponent to prepare for. That's like the topics in the logical Olympics. So, hello everybody in here. We got Lord Zed in here, Heracles. Raised by gypsies. Hobbes. So who volunteered first? Heracles? Did Heracles volunteer first up in here? Is Heracles going to be the first competitor of the evening? Yes, he did. Okay, so Heracles up first. I might up the challenge for this one. Instead of for or against, I am adding a particular possibility for argumentation in which the competitor will state their own position and be forced to defend it. So here you go, Heracles. Your assignment, whether you choose to accept it. The issue of animal rights. Who gets to decide and how? The issue of animal rights. Who gets to decide and how? The issue of animal rights. Who gets to decide and how? 1 to 2 minutes. Let's see what you got. No help from the chat. The chat is free to continue chatting, but do not assist in any way. Let's see what Heracles can come up with. About 90 seconds left. Logic Olympics are not meant to be easy, Lord Zed. And once again, reminder for all the listeners, being for or against any position, or even providing an open-ended argument, as in this instance, does not mean you actually believe this particular argument, does not mean you're for and against anything in any way. This is simply logical exercises to provide logical argumentation. It does not mean that the person either defending or going against a particular position, or even providing an open-ended argument of their own choosing, actually believes it. That's not what's going on here. Matari Sensei in here. You are volunteering next. All right, I'll put you on the list. Heracles, you got less than a minute left. Heracles, you should be wrapping up your arguments. I'm not going to cut you off if you're still going, but gotta be on your toes for these logical Olympics. On your toes. And I actually forgot to reiterate at the beginning, in order to make a relatively well-rounded argument, you should be addressing approximately 3 facets of an argument. Now, obviously, in 1 to 2 minutes, you're not going to be able to get super in-depth on any individual facet. But to at least address 3 facets of any particular issue briefly, just address their existence and just quick points behind it. If you're only going to address 1 facet of an argument, that's not really going to be a well thought out, comprehensive argument. Again, we're not looking for novels here. You only have 1 to 2 minutes. Just quickly addressing and acknowledging facets, 3 facets. Probably not going to have time for much more than 3, but I think there have been some people who did 4 maybe in the first 2 episodes. Hello, pretty cool friend up in here. Matari is up next. If anybody wants to volunteer to compete after Matari, feel free to do so. People volunteering in order will be put on the scoreboard. So, gonna call Heracles in a couple more seconds here if you want to make another point or 2. So finish up here. Heracles has to wrap it up here. Once again, the Logic Olympics is not supposed to be easy. It's not meant to be easy. So, Heracles, if you're done here, we're going to call your time. All right, so let's examine Heracles' argument here. The topic was open-ended. The issue of animal rights, who gets to decide, and how. Heracles' responses here. I believe that the issue of animal rights is an issue that should be decided by the people. The people, through vote, whether it be democratic or representative, should make the call. An overall approach with classification should be decided upon. Okay, so the people. So does that mean monarchies? Like, I wonder what this has to do. How would a monarchy make the call? So even if there was a king, the king doesn't get to decide by himself, has to be Democratic representative, which is perfectly fine to delineate that. So no one person should be in charge. You know, obviously could have gone a little bit more in depth on the pitfalls of having a single individual, but either way, I mean, not necessarily a bad position to mention Democratic or representative deciders here. Overall approach with classifications, okay. Domestic, farm, pest, etc. Okay, that's important. Unless you're a Buddhist, I guess. If you don't, wait, is that Buddhism? Who doesn't believe? Yeah, Buddhists don't believe in killing insects. Is that Buddhism? With civil and criminal penalties, life in general should be respected. Done. So, in general, life should be respected. Is that a hasty generalization logical fallacy? Is there some hypocrisy here in the classifications between domestic, farm, and pest? Because one person's domesticated cow, which there's some actually cool videos on YouTube of people who have cows as pets, or people who have saved cows or lambs from slaughter, even turkeys or chickens, and then they play with them. And they're all having a grand old time, happy to be alive. So how would these classifications be decided upon domestic, farm, pests? So now, you know, obviously Heracles could have also touched upon life-threatening life. So let's say there are deadly hornets in an area of an elementary school. How should the handling of hornets be determined? Should they be exterminated? Should they be safely relocated to perhaps a wilderness area where there are no humans? I mean, how and why? We need a little bit more comprehensive arguments here. Also, if this is democratic, so is this mob rule, so is this an appeal to popularity fallacy here? Because if everybody voted that animals shouldn't have rights, does that mean any animals can be slaughtered at any time if that's what the people decided? Heracles said, was not the sort of argument I was expecting to represent. Yeah, I mean, we're going to up the ante. We're not going to keep these rounds equal necessarily. We might be getting more and more difficult with these rounds. I want to focus a little bit more open-ended for this round. So, again, obviously the Logic Olympics are not for the faint of heart. Lord Zed in the chat said, this one got me thinking, even if everyone voted we should kill all eagles, that's still effed up, so I'm not sure the answer. Yeah, that's an example of appeal to popularity logical fallacy, because just because people agree on something, that doesn't make it moral in any way. And you have the further issue, who gets to decide and why. Is it even moral for people to claim they have the right to decide the morality of this animal rights issue in the first place? So we're going a little meta here, but it must be done. If we're going to be logical and reasonable, it must be done. So I like Heracles' statement in general, life in general should be respected. Now, that is kind of an appeal to vagueness fallacy because, and possibly hasty generalization, because if it should be, now respected doesn't mean you don't kill hornets if the hornets are deadly and they're going to kill a bunch of school children. But if it's possible to relocate them without killing them, should that be the goal? So a more comprehensive answer would probably would include weighing lives. For example, like if a dog attacks somebody, even a child, even if it kills a child, does that mean the dog should be killed? Or would it be more humane to relocate the dog? To put it in a special facility, a special training facility where it wouldn't have the opportunity to kill, or even a large preserve or island. there's so many options instead of just killing the dog, especially, I mean, one could argue it would be more moral to kill a human being who intentionally killed as opposed to a dog acting on instinct or being confused. Sometimes older dogs, if they have brain issues, they might attack their owners or even children because they don't exactly know what's going on. That's a little different than a very intentional serial killer going out there and killing. So weighing all of the animal lives against human lives, that, in my opinion, would be a critical component of a comprehensive argument. So, unfortunately, no points can be awarded to Heracles. Although that wasn't a horrible defense. It just simply wasn't comprehensive, and it relied too much of appeal on popularity with the people deciding and not really addressing the morality of who gets to decide and why. Matari Sensei stating, who says animals need rights? Well, again, that would be part of a comprehensive answer if you expand on that in a logical fashion. Big Pine Sailing saying, yeah, tough one. I have pet chickens. I've eaten them. What do you make of that? Well, again, I mean, it's something people can obviously disagree on what is or isn't moral. Some could argue, I mean, obviously, if you were starving and you were going to die, I mean, that's the food chain and the cycle of life. But if you have the means to survive, not just survive, but to be nutritionally sound without killing the chickens, perhaps that could be viewed as immoral in that particular situation. Matari Sensei also saying environment conservation seems to be the best justification. Ethan W. in the house here. Welcome back, sir. You are still tied in first place position here. Nobody has usurped your points. And we're getting tougher and tougher by the rounds. Here in round 4, we're taking a little bit more of an open-ended approach. I might still throw in some questions on for or against, but I might also present positions where you will be making an argument of your own making, not necessarily against or for something. Yeah, Heracles, your argument wasn't that bad. It just kind of hinged on the appeal to popularity fallacy, which is kind of an issue. But in general, having, obviously life in general should be respected. That's a good platform there. Just needs to be a little bit more comprehensive in examination. Like, for example, weighing against other lives, particularly human lives, and, basing it on, is it possible to preserve life without ending life? Like, again, in the example of relocating hornets. If it's possible to relocate deadly animals, then would that be the better position than simply exterminating them? Big Pine Sailing saying, let me put it this way. Most days I don't eat my pet chickens. Yeah, I mean, these are tough. These are not meant to be easy. These are not meant to be easy. Okay, Matari Sensei, are you ready, Sensei? This is going to be a tough one. Are you ready, Sensei? And who's up next? I'm assuming Ethan W. wants to take the lead here. I'm assuming Ethan W. wants to get out of this tied first place position. All right, Matari Sensei is ready. At what age should someone be considered a legal adult? And you must logically defend that position. At what age should legal adult status begin? At what age should someone be considered a legal adult? 1 to 2 minutes on the clock. Once again, I'm not going to cut you off if you're still rolling. Everyone in the chat, feel free to continue chatting, but do not assist the competitor in any way. We're ramping it up, baby. We're ramping it up. If we're going to bring logic and reason back to this highly deficient world, we cannot stay stagnant. We have to constantly be improving our logical capabilities. Let's see what Matari Sensei can come up with. There are not going to be any easy ones tonight, people. Big Pine Sailing talking about wild chicken is different than the breeds you'd find on the farm, though sometimes I get domestic breeds off the streets. Ethan W says, I gotta get warmed up first. Let me go get some scotch on ice right quick. Should be good to go in about 13 minutes. Who's up after Matari Sensei? We got any volunteers for the next competitor? Who's next? I guess Ethan W's probably... Yeah, we're going to need at least one person before Ethan W. Lord Zed has volunteered, so Lord Zed would be next. And depending on timing, I guess Ethan W will be after that. If anybody else wants to volunteer, we'll have a time for at least one other person as well. Matari Sensei's probably got another 45 seconds or so. IB McFly, welcome. Saying, Bruce, I am working through the Seagal content and it's extraordinary. Is Steven Seagal the real life most interesting man alive? Very possible. Very possible. Alright, Matari Sensei, gotta start wrapping it up. Final points from Matari Sensei on the topic of what age should a legal adult status begin? Merman 84, welcome, welcome. Final point, Matari. Okay, Matari, you're all set. Let's, Big Pine Sailing, I said no cheating. But okay, technically I called it, so okay, it's fine. Big Pine Sailing is saying 9 is the answer. Get to work, kids. Okay. So, the question was, at what age should legal adult status begin? What age should someone be considered a legal adult? Matari Sensei's response: taking into account social norms, I think the best age would be whenever we can best determine the brain being fully developed. Generally considered to be around age 25. That is correct. Did you have to look that up? The frontal lobe, at least, is on average becomes fully formed approximately age 25. Only because there are multiple, generally considered, you could have thrown in there scientifically generally considered, just to make it a little bit more fact based. Only because there are multiple privileges accessible even if you're not legally an adult. What do you mean by privileges? Smoking, voting? Like, is that a right? Is that a privilege? If we were to actually change society, assuming this isn't a blank slate thing, that would be the most easy to accommodate, but would have to change the structure around the age of majority as well. Otherwise, I'd say leaving it around 16, 18, like most of the world, is reasonable and hasn't caused any problems in history from my knowledge. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That's a problematic statement. So, first of all, you're going anecdotal logical fallacy, centering it around your particular knowledge, which in general is also kind of redundant because basically everything you're speaking of is from your knowledge. But let's wow, yeah, this is really a tough one. We're gonna dissect this one, people. We're really gonna dissect this one because it's tough. So one could argue a majority of the world's problems are because 18 to 21 is considered an adult. I mean, everything from drinking and driving to suicides, accessibility to firearms or weapons or bars or strip clubs or any of these areas where you don't need an adult. I mean, if the adult age was moved to 25 or even age of consent, right? The age of consent is even as young as 15 in some countries and all the way up to 17 in most places, some places 18. I mean, look at the amount of problems and exploitation that has caused. Now, if it was 25, as you mentioned accurately, scientifically accurately, that the brain, or at least the frontal lobe, which is logical comprehension, deductive reasoning, all of the logic is processed by the frontal lobe, or at least most of it, age 25. So you're saying it hasn't caused any problems being 16 to 18? I mean, also think about how less likely someone over 25 would be to be brainwashed by their country into going to the front lines and dying for rich people to get more money off of oil or whatever. It's a lot easier to brainwash a 17 and 18-year-old than a 24 or 25-year-old. Same thing in voting. Now, obviously, without getting into the issues of voting, but, for the sake of argument, let's say voting is fine. If people weren't allowed to vote until age 25, what would the result for society look like? So that's a weird thing to say, that it hasn't caused any problems. One could argue that it's caused monumental problems for the world in allowing 18-year-olds to go to war, allowing 18-year-olds to vote, allowing even 21-year-olds to purchase alcohol and destroy their brains, because a lot more alcohol damage can happen prior to age 25 than after age 25. I mean, technically, males can, even biologically outside of the brain, the body still grows until age 26 to 28. Females, I believe, are closer to 18 to 20 or 17 to 20 for physical maturity. But males, actually, the male the male biology outside of the brain continues to grow until close to 30. So the damage caused even by being able to buy alcohol legally at age 21 is pretty substantial. I mean, a lot of these family annihilators, all of this is brought about, not all of it, a certain portion. There's not that many sober family annihilators. I mean, these are people on drugs or alcohol, access to alcohol. So if the age was changed to 25, I mean, that would substantially change a lot in the world. Substantially. Now, obviously, a separate conversation is who has the right to decide all that. But given certain parameters of this argument, where we say, we're not going to go into the whole voting thing or the structure of society, simply within the current structure, the legal adult age. So, yeah, I mean, this is obviously a tough one. Matari Sensei says, I'm going from the understanding that historically the age has generally been younger. That is true. That is true. But historically, look at the amount of just human death in history, generally. I mean, it's also why they want to get them young in the schools, because indoctrination into the cult of statism and scientism, it's a lot harder to hoodwink someone 25 plus. I mean, even if they were brainwashed prior, they're not actively in a state of brainwashing like a 17 or 18-year-old college senior being recruited for the military. So, yeah, it's a totally different situation. And historically, yes, it could be as young as 12, 13, 14, 15, depending on the society. But, obviously you can make any argument you want. That was this assignment, is to make whatever argument and defend it. Saying historically is also kind of an appeal to popularity. Well, they've always been doing it this way. I mean, that's not a logical argument. Lord Zed says, I handled my responsibilities, but no skirting around the fact that I was a dumb kid at age 18. I mean, that's pretty much most people. Big Pine Sailing said, I was ready to rock at 14. Yeah, so here's the thing. This is obviously an incredibly difficult assignment. I mean, because there's so many facets here. I mean, you addressed the brain formation. That was good. I mean, that's critical. I mean, I would say you can't even participate in this argument if you're not talking about brain development. So that was good. You hit that aspect well. But other than that, I mean, you didn't really address any of the other facets. And you didn't even go with it, because if it's 25, why? I mean, you had a good support there for it being 25. You had a scientifically backed support for 25, but you defaulted to popularity because that's the way they've always done it. Then you defaulted to the anecdote of, to your knowledge, it actually hasn't caused any problems in history, which is a false premise fallacy because it seems to have caused quite a lot of problems. Ethan Witzel in the chat here. It's incredible how many logical arguments Bruce comes up with so fast. Can the winner of these Olympics take you on, Bruce? Final boss battle style. Maybe we could do that. Yeah, so Matar, Matar, that probably was the hardest so far, but you actually had a good support there with the age of 25. I mean, if you didn't have that, you would have had absolutely nothing. That was an excellent support. Now, you didn't specify that it was scientific. You said it was generally accepted, but it's scientifically backed. I mean, they've done brain scans on quite a lot of people. It seems like it is a verified scientific fact that on average it's 25. Now, another issue, obviously, is that here's another major issue another facet I would say needs to be addressed in any comprehensive argument. is if someone has a mental disability, if someone is mentally disabled, even their fully formed 25-year-old brain, if it's the equivalent of an average 11-year-old brain, should they still be a legal adult? So where are we? You'd have to address just capability of the disabled, and also what about people with mental health issues? So even if they're a super genius, if, let's say, they're a legitimate sociopath, now, sociopathy isn't by choice, just like psychopathy. If someone, it's like some of these serial killers, they think they're doing God's work killing these people. They're obviously not, but they think they're the good guy in their own head. Should that be viewed equal as a regular functioning adult without that issue? So there's quite a few facets to consider here, which are all problematic. Now, also, just because we can say someone should be a legal adult at age 18, does that mean someone shouldn't be able to buy a gun at age 17? So obviously that doesn't mean that necessarily. You can say children should have the rights to buy a gun without being a legal adult. I mean, that all needs to be obviously addressed. You obviously, just like you can get a job at age 14, 15, 16, whatever, I don't know if it's state dependent or federal, so you can actually make the choice to work without being a legal adult. Ethan Witzel saying, FYI, Bruce, I logged in on my computer just now, so it looks like my name changed. Ethan W0406 is my other account name. It's easier to type on here than my phone. Okay. Or is this just Ethan Witzel attempting to take over from Ethan W. and pick up his 2 hard-fought points? Yeah, it's problematic because what if somebody's an emancipated minor? If someone's an emancipated minor, they don't have a legal parent or guardian to sign them off on something. So if someone's an emancipated minor, they can get a job. Can they buy a gun? Can they vote? You know, where does all of this fall in line? Uh-oh. Now Ethan W0406 says it's me. Ethan 777 says no, it's me. What is going on here? Is Ethan a clone or are these triplets? What's going on here? Or are these interdimensional time travelers? I mean, I am very confused here. But with this legal adult status, I mean, you had a good platform there for 25. And you could have made quite a few logical arguments like I did in terms of just the way drugs and alcohol can affect your brain. Even if you say 18 is a legal adult, but you have to be 21. Why would you have to be 21 to purchase alcohol if 18 is a legal adult? I mean, there's an issue there that needs to be addressed. If you're a legal adult, that means you can make all the legal choices for yourself, including purchasing alcohol. I mean, there's a lot of issues here that need to be addressed. So if you're making a comprehensive argument, you'd have to address all of these points. Heracles says, I see how he has those points now. Well, Prophet C seems to be some kind of prophet and psychic, so she got 2 points. Ethan W is some kind of interdimensional time traveler, possibly exploiting time, so he has 2 points. Okay, Ethan, I mean, I don't know, we'd have to verify some of that. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Big Pine Sailing saying, it's such a variable thing, there isn't just an age where we can suddenly handle ourselves. I know 80-year-old degenerates and 11-year-old polite young men. Yeah, here's the thing, Big Pine Sailing, excellent point, that's the last point I'll address here. Should there be a cognitive test to determine legal adult status? I mean, that seems to be the best option. Because yes, there are, like, if you say, let's say the age of consent is 16 or 17 in some states, or even 18. An 18-year-old, in a lot of ways, is a very immature child. Even if they're highly intelligent, I mean, how mature can an 18-year-old really be? Now, there are 18-year-olds that are really mature, but they're the minority, not the majority. So how are you going to make laws for the exception? I mean, look at all the problems here. Even if we have a general 25-year-old can be, generally accepted, but you still have to do the test. But it would be a general average age where if you're an average 25-year-old can pass the test. So if you're a highly mature 18-year-old, maybe you can pass that test. If you're a highly immature look how many 30-year-olds have completely messed up their lives. If they didn't have the options that a legal adult has for even just until age 25, perhaps they wouldn't have completely screwed up their life, and they could be a productive member of society. So there's quite a few different issues here. Lord Zed saying, not a cognitive test, you have to climb a mountain or kill a bear or something. Yes, rites of passage. If you haven't checked out my rites of passage podcast, you can check that out. But it seems like there needs to be possibly a threefold test. A general maturity test, an intellectual cognitive function test, and some kind of emotional test. Lord Zed says you have to go on a vision quest and survive 3 days in the woods with a hatchet. Yeah, Matari Sensei saying, I also think we infantilize ourselves nowadays. Yes. Well, it's both of the ends of the spectrum going on. There's like 15-year-olds pretending to be adults. There's 30-year-olds pretending to be children. I mean, this is just crazy. I mean, we're definitely living in clown world loony times. So I would say there's definitely a case to be made for age 25, and there's a case to be made for cognitive tests. Because every individual is obviously different. So, and then what do you do with emancipated minors? What do you do with purchasing guns or deciding to drop out of school? Obviously indoctrination facilities aren't exactly good, but in terms of just having the right to make that decision at which age? Yeah, good point. Big Pine Sailing saying we also handle young people very softly these days. They aren't capable of much, and that's a result of our society. Yes, because someone who's coddled and raised in a participation trophy type environment, they're not necessarily going to be as developed at age 18 as someone who has parents that teach responsibility and hard work and meritocracy-based ideas. So every individual is so different. Lord Zed saying, yeah, but even if we raise them well, you're still 10 and never had a girl break your heart or anything, you haven't lived. I don't know if anybody's arguing for a 10-year-old to be able to. I mean, let's say there was one who just was that mature and a genius, etc. That's fine. If one 10-year-old can pass the cognitive test, I mean, that's not really going to cause an issue. Because if the average age is 25, I mean, there might be some 40 or 50-year-olds who couldn't pass the test. I mean, a lot of this will be the final point I make on this. The homogenization of society has really been, I would say, a major downfall of the West. Because if you look at some of these older civilizations, again, if it's as reported, I don't claim anything is true or untrue, but it seems like in older societies, like if you were a savant at something, nobody's holding you back and making you do something else. Like you pursue what you're good at. Like, if you're just a super genius at a particular subject, and that's evident at age 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you're not forced into all these other general subjects that you might not be good at, and you might even flunk out of school, and then you become a failure the rest of your life. Some of these other societies, they seem to have been able to recognize greatness. So if someone's truly great at something, they don't force them to have some kind of general education or anything. They're just, they pursue their greatness, and the society is better for Ethan777 saying there can be only one. What is going on? We have interdimensional Highlanders in the chat battling for supremacy. What is going on? All right. Anybody have any final questions about the age question? Obviously, we cannot award Matari Sensei any points. Not comprehensive enough of an argument. Lord Zed is up next, and then I guess we're going to do Ethan W after that. I don't know which one, though. Lord Zed, are you ready? Calling Lord Zed. Lord Zed is ready. Okay. Lord Zed. Open-ended question. You are mounting the argument. Should prostitution be legal? Should prostitution be legal? Should prostitution be legal? Have fun. 1 to 2 minutes. Let's see what Lord Zed comes up with. Remember, we're looking for the addressing of at least 3 facets. A 3-pronged argument. You can't just focus on one aspect of an argument. Touch upon 3. Doesn't need to be more than 3. Let's see what Lord Zed can come up with. Ethan W. asking, Bruce, did you get raptured into the eclipse on Monday? Oh, man. Raptured into the eclipse. I looked at it, but I don't know. How would someone know? Are we all living in parallel realities without even knowing it? Let's see what kind of an argument Lord Zed can mount here. Approximately a minute remaining. Yeah, I can see your comments, Lord Zed. I'm just waiting you to finish up before I go over them. You still got like 30 seconds at least. Keep going. "15 seconds. Final points." Final points, Lord Zed. Put them up. Put up your final points. Alright, you about done? Gotta cut Lord Zed off. I mean, if you're still typing out a response, type it out. Big Pine Sailing, no cheating, do not assist anybody. Okay, Lord Zed's done. Alright, let's examine Lord Zed's argument here. Yes, absolutely, 100%. I'd say it should be legal because an athlete can use his body to entertain men and make money. A woman should be able to use her body to entertain men and make money too. Okay, we got some non-congruent arguments and false dichotomies here because an athlete can be a man or woman, and a prostitute can also be a man or a woman. Besides, having a wife or girlfriend is the same thing. She ain't sticking around with you giving her money. Wait, did you mean same thing or sane thing? You typed out sane with an N. I'd say it's ridiculous. Is that appeal to incredulity? It's illegal, and they don't want women being their own bosses. They want to have their hand in their pockets, so made it illegal. Well, you also have to specify at which point, because certain countries it is perfectly legal. Isn't it also legal in Nevada? They have perfectly legal ranches, right, in Nevada? And also, again, a prostitute could be a male. It's not exclusive to females. Men and women should be able to make that deal, that's all. Okay, so that last point is interesting because you could have really addressed the free market. Because if you're living in a non-fascist society, yes, if you're a consenting adult engaging in business, willingly engaging of your own free will with another consenting adult in a business transaction that doesn't affect anybody other than the two parties. I mean, obviously that's just a free market. That's a free market. So you didn't really make that argument, though. I mean, I guess that's what you meant by men and women should be able to make that deal. But you gotta, you gotta make that clear. So free market capitalism would obviously be legal. Not to mention, again, you could address who has the right to declare it legal or illegal in the first place. And you could have also addressed, if you film it, it's legal, even in the current climate, even in the current bureaucracy. So basically, you could just film every encounter and claim, there's a lot of weird things with prostitution you have to address. It's also the oldest profession, supposedly. You could have pointed that out. You could have addressed how it was, even if it was frowned upon in certain ways, it was basically openly practiced throughout history in every civilization. You could have also addressed how, for example, America, the whore of Babylon, is the #1 exporter of smut, I guess we could call it, and yet there's prostitution's illegal. It's kind of a weird thing. America's definitely weird. You could have addressed all those points, but you mostly were kind of stuck in this false dichotomy, non-congruent argument, focusing on prostitution's only being female. Even if the majority are female, that still doesn't make it a congruent argument. But yeah, ultimately, wait, why do you need a half a point for the athlete thing? Because an athlete could be a female athlete or a male athlete. I don't think I can't award any points simply because if you expanded specifically on free market, if you didn't go for the non-congruent argument, false dichotomy of all prostitutes have to be women, yes, but female athletes can also use their body to entertain. And males can also be prostitutes. So that's non-congruent and false dichotomy. Yeah, you didn't say they couldn't, but your entire argument was phrased with, I mean, you explicitly stated here, they don't want women being their own bosses. They want to have their hand in their pocket, so they made it illegal. But if you wanted to follow that line, again, you'd have to say men or women who are prostitutes and hand in the pocket. You could have made the argument it could also be taxed, you know. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could have handled those arguments. But you seem to have kind of been focusing on the women being prostitutes angle. Like, you could have brought up, oldest profession, practice throughout history. There's just so many issues. You could have brought up free market capitalism, the morality of consenting adults doing what consenting adults want to do, and whose business is it what consenting adults do. But you kind of only focused on the female thing, the prostitutes being females. So I cannot in good conscience award any points. I mean, there are no points on the board tonight. Big Pine Sailing, another facet here. Trafficking and exploitation is the major issue with prostitution. Otherwise, should be told, yes, that is another facet that needs to be addressed in any kind of comprehensive argument. I mean, that's kind of a weird one, too, because if it was completely legal, because a lot of these criminal elements, same thing with prohibition and the rise of mobs, the mafias, which Steven Seagal single-handedly shut down with his testimony. I mean, there's a lot of issues where making it illegal is potentially making it a lot worse with all the trafficking, because then it's all underground and harder to catch. Yeah, there's a lot of issues with, I mean, okay, this will be the final point I make on the subjects. I mean, all roads kind of go back to statism, because if the government wasn't robbing everybody of taxes and destroying everybody's mental and physical health, I mean, less people would even need to turn to prostitution in the first place. Because if there's abundance and there's all the food and resources you need, I mean, 99%, I mean, that might be a false stat. The majority of people engaging in prostitution are probably not doing it because they like it. Obviously, a certain percentage might be. I do not think that is the vast majority. So if they had everything they needed, why would they turn to that? If they hadn't been brainwashed in government indoctrination facilities, perhaps they would have the mental wherewithal to pursue their other talents. So, yes, it's a very multifaceted argument. Ethan W., you're up next. Are you ready? Are you ready to put some... There's been no points on the board tonight. All right, Ethan W. said the whiskey's kicking in, ready to rock. Okay, Ethan W. Should felons have the same rights as everyone else upon release? Should felons have the same rights as everyone else upon release? Should felons have the same rights as everyone else upon release? Open-ended argument. Try to address 3 facets. 1 to 2 minutes. Let's see what you can do. I mean, it's probably been the most challenging round so far. Everyone's been forced to make their own arguments and defend instead of being given arguments to either support or go against. Let's see what Ethan W. can do with this one. Really taking his time getting started. He only got about 90 seconds left. Very, very tough night today. Very, very tough round. I mean, we could take one more competitor if anybody else wants to go. Big Pine Sailing, are you up for a challenge? You've been active in the chat. AJD previously said, and politicians sell themselves for money, so I'd say it already is. Yeah, that's a good point. Anybody else brave enough to compete tonight after Ethan W goes? Well, also Lord Zed saying, if I can pay LeBron to entertain me with his body, I should be able to pay Lizzo to entertain me with her body. That's really all I meant, but I'll do better next time. Well, that's not necessarily prostitution. Like, that's, you're kind of talking strippers at that point, right? They're not making contact with you. Because prostitution is kind of specific to, well, in the general definition, it's very specific to sexual activity. Because obviously stripping is legal. Well, even lap dances are technically legal, right? Making contact of some kind. But why would you say Lizzo though? Wow. Okay. Big Pine Sailing is willing to run one. So after Ethan W, Big Pine Sailing will be up, and then we'll see how much time is left. That might be the end of the round there. Sure you were, Lord Zed. Sure you were joking about Lizzo. All right, Ethan W, what do you got? 20 seconds left or so? Final points. All right, you all set, Ethan W? Wrap it up. Ethan W, let's go. Wrap it up. All right, gonna call Ethan W here. All right, so felons are people who have been convicted by their peers to be untrustworthy. Based on the agreed upon principle and laws of the society they reside, therefore they should have limited rights that they regain over time to allow themselves to prove to their peers that they deserve the freedoms and privileges of those who are not convicted, even though they might have originally not been guilty. That's a little complicated. Felons can also move to another country to regain rights that their new society would give them. Felons who have decided to stay in a country, then break those laws, should have reduced or limited rights because they knew the laws and still decided to break them. And since ignorance is not an excuse, then they had no excuse to not know. And since they had the option to leave and do their activities in another land that accepts that behavior, they must suffer the consequences. If a society does not agree to laws that enforce them, innocent people could be harmed. Felons should be given the opportunity, though, to regain some, if not all, of their rights if they can prove they deserve them back. Okay, here's the main issue I see. So the premise is relatively sound, right? I mean, it kind of depends. Well, we're talking felonies, so these are supposedly some big activities. So are we talking mentally well individuals, mentally well felons? I mean, you could have made you could have addressed one facet there. But if they were convicted by their peers, but after they paid their debt to society, so if they were convicted, whether it was 1 year or 10 or 20 or 30, that's the debt. You didn't address the main factor here. Because if they addressed that debt, now they're out after they paid the debt. So you're saying that even after they paid their debt, they still shouldn't have the rights? Because committing the felony and becoming convicted, again, assuming they were guilty, or even if they were innocent, they paid a debt they didn't owe, so now they still don't have their rights? Because wasn't the deal that now they have a debt to society? Because if ignorance is no excuse, they have that debt to society. Now, once they paid the debt, I mean, this seems to be the main factor, and you didn't really address it. If they paid the debt, they still shouldn't have any rights or limited rights, and then over time they get it back after they already paid the debt? So even if we agree that they must suffer the consequences, which would be the prison time, right? So they committed a felony, they got convicted, now they must suffer the consequences. Okay, so let's say we all agree with that. The consequences is 10, 20, 30 years in prison. So now they suffered those consequences, so your position is they should still have limited rights after they paid their debt to society with their prison sentence? I mean, that's kind of the crux of the issue. I would say that's the main facet. And you didn't seem to address that. Also, you kind of presupposed they knew the laws and still decided to break them. Now, okay, that might be true in most cases, but let's say, I mean, not all felonies are created equal, right? If they were in a highly emotional state, and everybody has different emotional levels of control, right? If in an emotional state, they weren't thinking on whether something was legal or illegal. Like, I don't know, let's say they walk in on a spouse cheating on them and they just see red. It's not that they were aware that it was, some kind of felony assault and battery that they committed. They weren't thinking, wait a second, this is a felony that'll give me 5 to 20, but I'm going to do it anyway, because that's not what happened in that situation. Now, regardless of that, if they're convicted and they pay their debt to society, they should still have limited rights after paying their debt? Is that your position? Did the chat just freeze? Is everybody still here? Okay, Lord Zed here. Lord Zed said, I just know it's weird. My friend can't vote because he sold weed in college. Yeah, that's insane how selling plants is a felony. I mean, that's another facet to address, too, because not all felonies are equal. Is a consenting adult selling plants to another consenting adult, should that even be a felony? Should that be instant jury nullification? But whether it should or shouldn't, after the debt is paid to society, after the prison sentence, why should or shouldn't there be a limitation of rights? And Ethan W., you never really addressed that. You never addressed why or why not after paying the debt to society. I mean, your main argument, or the point that kind of I see standing out here, deserve the freedoms and privileges of those who are not convicted. And also, they knew the laws and still decided to break them. I would say most, depending on which crimes, crimes of passion, those are not, or people in dreadful situations where they need to do, certain bad things to survive. I would argue they are not thinking, well, wait a second, this is a felony, this is 5 to 20 years, I'm going to go do it anyway. I would argue that is not their thought process. But even if it is, after the debt is paid, I mean, the crucial issue here is, if they paid their debt, why or why not should they not have full rights? Now, after the debt is paid, you can even say, okay, now there's a probationary period after release. If it's 2 weeks, if it's 2 months, or even a year, and they don't commit any additional crimes, then they get their full rights. You could have made that argument. You didn't really specifically make that argument. You said over time they can get them back, but, you didn't specifically address the debt that's paid with the prison sentence. Because a felon is somebody who's been convicted of a felony. So they would have, served prison time for that felony. So that's the real issue here. So I kind of would give you a quarter point, I guess, but I don't think I can go half a point. Ethan W. says, well, who's to say that doing jail time is the full repayment of the debt? Well, I mean, the justice system says that. Because once the debt is paid, then they're out free in society. Now, if you're saying that the debt can never be repaid, I mean, that's a little weird. You can make the argument. I mean, yeah, who's to say anything, right? It's up to you to make the logical arguments for or against any of what you chose to in this situation. But on paper, the debt is the jail time. Now, they can get out of jail early and then still be on probation, obviously, as part of the deal. But if they serve the full sentence, technically, on paper, based on the legal system, that is the debt. Now, if you're saying that they should still have to prove that they deserve to be part of society after paying the debt, I mean, that's fine. You can make that argument. You didn't really, you weren't really specific in making that argument, though. You could have said, obviously the debt was paid. Now, just to make sure, since other people, there needs to be a period of time, a good faith period where they show that they acknowledge that they did wrong and they can be a good member of society. But a lot of people also don't hire felons. So they don't give them the opportunity to demonstrate whether or not they have been rehabilitated, so to speak, or whether or not they felt that they were really in the wrong, and they felt that the debt was truly owed, and that they paid it. Well, you never really even addressed any of their prison time at all. And how can they prove they deserve their rights back if they don't have any of them? Like, if people don't hire felons, I mean, it's kind of a weird thing because it's kind of discriminatory not to hire felons, right? That's discrimination. It's based on somebody's background or status. So it's weird. I mean, it's not simple. It's not simple to make these arguments. This has obviously been the most challenging round thus far. I mean, you addressed certain points, but you never really... I would say you never addressed the main issue, which is the prison time or the debt. Because if it's not the prison time, what is the debt? Like, what should it be? How should it be served? How should it be actually demonstrated that it deserved rights back? Like, let's say, because if somebody... Here's another issue. So if a felon is not allowed, why would a felon not be allowed to preserve their own life? So a felon gets out of prison. Let's say he's rehabilitated. Let's say he wants nothing to do with his old gang buddies. And they're going to kill him for it because you don't leave the gang. But he can't legally own a gun. So he has to go get a gun illegally, possibly violate, further laws, felony possession, and and go back to prison just for trying to preserve his own life. How is that moral in any way? And if people don't hire felons, now he's going to slide back into a life of crime just to survive. Whereas if he was given full rights back, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to hallucinate to know percentages, but a certain percentage, possibly even half or more, if they really do want to make a good go of their life and they're not given the opportunity to, because they weren't given their full rights back after they served their prison sentence. None of this stuff is simple, but there's definitely a lot of facets to explore here. I just think it's kind of crazy to determine that someone who has served time for a felony is not allowed to own a firearm to preserve their life. What if they have a family? So what if they have kids and they're poor, they live in a bad neighborhood? They're not allowed to own a gun, not just for their own protection, but for their to protect their children. I mean, think how insane that is. Ethan W. says, shoot guys for the final boss battle. We might have to combine our powers like Captain Planet, take on Bruce. Telegram study group, anyway. No, but think about how crazy that is. Like, a felon can't even defend his family legally with a firearm. He cannot even defend his children. I mean, this is kind of a bonkers society we live in. Now, obviously, there could be rationale for not wanting felons to own guns legally, because if they're career criminals and they're going to go kill more people. But how is anybody to know any of that, first of all? Second of all, if they're that much of a scumbag criminal, they're going to go get a gun anyway. They're going to get it from their criminal gang buddies. They're not going to get it legally. So how is it hurting to have felons allowed to legally own guns? Because if they're criminal scumbags that are going to go shoot people anyway, they're going to go do it with illegally owned guns. I mean, you can look at the stats in Baltimore or Chicago or any of these cities where, there's severe gun restriction. Obviously, the crime rate is even higher because criminals don't follow laws. Whereas, let's say a felon who's reformed and paid his debt and wants to be a productive member of society is not allowed to. I mean, this is just bonkers stuff. I haven't really heard anybody talk about that too much, but it's something I've obviously spent some time thinking about. It's almost like society is intentionally designed to kind of prevent reformed criminals from ever having a good life. And just because you point to a few that made it anyway, as if that means that the system is somehow just. Okay, we got one more competitor here. Big Pine Sailing, are you still up to compete? Let's see if Big Pine Sailing can put any points on the scoreless board tonight. I mean, our rankings have not changed one bit. All right, you're going to get the tough one, Big Pine Sailing. This is going to be the toughest one of the night. It's the only one left on my list. It's not specific to you. I didn't single you out. But this is a tough one. Fair warning, Big Pine Sailing. Fair warning. Another open-ended question for tonight's open-ended style round. How is morality determined? How is morality determined? How is morality determined? Try to address at least 3 facets. Attempt not to fall for any logical fallacies. Like I said, the Logic Olympics is not for the faint of heart or the faint of mind. Let's see what Big Pine Sailing can come up with. Ethan W. in the chat says, Bruce, I got an idea. Celebrity Logic Olympics. I think that might be very painful, my friend. It would be wild and hilarious, though, yes. All right, Big Pine Sailing. What do you got? Maybe 30 seconds left or so. Let's see what Big Pine Sailing can come up with here. All right, so let's wrap this up here. Final point. Final point. Okay, so Big Pine Sailing done. Let's see what he's got. How is morality determined? Morality seems to be intuitive, however, it is not wholly subjective. as even though a serial killer may think he is doing God's work, as you said earlier, not many others would agree. So there does seem to be an objective morality that can be determined through one's works and the reactions to those works by those directly affected. So, okay, this is a little bit tricky because you're kind of delving into either appeal to popularity or cherry picking logical fallacy by saying we are only going to poll the group that was directly affected by a particular person's actions. But let's say, I mean, this is tough because parents even kill their own children or sell their own children. So if those parents said the guy that kidnapped their children that they wanted gone did no wrong, does that make it less morally wrong? I mean, I don't know. It's just that's tough to use that benchmark. Seems kind of like what the judge said about pornography. Hard to define, but I know it when I see it. Some societies may see some things as moral where others don't. Don't have one other than those directly affected by one's actions. I mean, yeah, you could also look at societies that were, sacrificing virgins or whatever. Or, societies that think abortion or the sacrifice of the unborn is somehow moral and just, or at least not immoral or whatever. So that's all very, very tough. So is your main argument here that those directly affected get to decide what is moral and what is not? Like, what if certain slaves in a certain civilization are so brainwashed into being slaves that even their families think there's no other way other than to be slaves? So if they all agree that slavery isn't immoral, then does that make it immoral? Would that make it moral if they all agree that it's not immoral and they're directly affected? I don't know if you can use that metric. Especially with all the gaslighting, the MK Ultra, etc., etc. Well, that's the thing, Big Pine Sailing. Depending on what you read, he said the virgin sacrificed probably feels like the sacrifice isn't moral. It depends on how brainwashed they are, right? It depends how drugged they are. It depends on a lot of things. Some of them might think it's an honor. I mean, look at suicide bombers. They're sacrificing themselves due to the brainwashing, but they might think they weren't even brainwashed. They might think that that was perfectly fine what everybody did to them. Or even, even going into darker territory, satanic ritual abuse, etc. If they were that cognitively scarred and they thought it was normal, it was all normalized, and then they did it to their children, etc., etc. So even what the victim feels about it might not necessarily reflect morality. Well, so Big Pine Sailing responded, so it takes a third party to recognize the brainwashing isn't moral. Well, which third party? Because if it's someone who's part of the whole cult, or if it's someone part of a different cult who also doesn't find it immoral, so that might not work either. So, I mean, it's very, very difficult. I would actually say your initial point about intuitive, there's definitely something there, almost like an instinct, like survival instincts of animals. There seems to be something there, just a feeling of wrongness. Now, you could make that argument that if there is a creator, and creator implanted morality into his creation, then that could be part of it. And when brains become corrupted, they might be numb to that feeling. I mean, there's many different arguments you can make here. You could also go by the old adage of common law. If there is no injured party, there is no crime. So if a party is injured, regardless of whether they know they're injured, right? Like if somebody signs away their right to their life, say, I'm going to sign this piece of paper that means this other person can kill me. Now, depending on their state of mind, I mean, regardless of their state of mind, can you surrender your rights? Is it moral? Like, if you sign a piece of paper surrendering your rights, is it still moral for the person violating your rights to violate your right because you signed a piece of paper? Or are human rights innate, and therefore morality is somehow innate? It's a very difficult question, Lord Zed. Very, very difficult. If it's all innate, and if there is a creator or intelligent designer, and it's all innate, that could be a way morality is determined. Or you could use common law. I mean, you could, if an injured party, if someone's an injured party, then their immorality has occurred. If a party was injured, regardless of whether they recognize they've been injured, right? Like, let's say somebody is mentally disabled or whatever, someone breaks their arm, and they might not even understand. They might think it's fun that somebody broke their arm. So, but there was still a violation of rights there. There was still an injured party, regardless of whether the injured party wants to press charges or understood what happened. That would still be immoral if we go by the common law benchmark of parties being injured or wills being violated with or without injury. So, you can go with the non-aggression principle. You can go with the violation of will. Now, it gets really crazy when you go into the realm of MK Ultra and brainwashing, where a person doesn't even know what their own will is. It gets dicey. A lot of facets here to address. A lot of facets here. I mean, again, going back to the societies, what one society finds immoral that another doesn't, is that because they've been deceived in some way? Whether we're going by the road to hell being paved by good intentions, doesn't really matter how they were deceived for the purpose of this example. But yeah, it's definitely a tough one. Yeah, I mean, the arguments, you could use the creator argument, you could use the common law argument of injured parties, and you could even use the, I guess, I mean, what would you call it? I mean, I guess it'd be a non-creator spiritual argument of simply violating the will of another is immoral. So you have all those to choose from. You kind of just went with the cherry-picking fallacy of those affected. Because those affected might not realize the immorality of something. Like, they might think it's an honor to have their family member killed for a particular sacrifice or whatever. I mean, if you want to get really controversial, I mean, some people, that's the way they view the military. They think it's an honor that somebody gave their life for their country. Was that a violation of will? Was that simply gaslighting people to go fight, a banker war to make old rich people more money at the expense of their own life by being a mercenary for the state and surrendering their life to statism? I mean, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, even if their family holds the same views, even if the people directly affected hold those same views, is that what makes it moral? Or not immoral? I don't know. A lot of questions there. A lot of questions. So we have a scoreless night here on the Logic Olympics round 4. I mean, maybe I'll do a poll. I don't really want to make the rounds easier, but I don't necessarily have to make them harder either. We'll probably stay at approximately this level. But I will continue in the next round. Maybe we'll do more specific for or against assignments. But shout out to all our brave competitors. Not many people are brave enough to compete in the Logic Olympics, but the goal, of course, is simply to get better. Yeah, raise the bar. Yes. To simply learn and get better, and I think that's what everybody's doing. So yeah, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. Yeah, Lord Zed says, not easier. We need to do better. This was a good learning experience. Yes. So yeah, I mean, I think everybody's continuing to learn and make more and more logical arguments. and hearing all different types of examples for arguments to be as comprehensive as possible and as logical as possible. Heracles asks, the homework assignment for the Q&A was to watch the movie The Hidden. That's the next Mindshock Q&A. We'll either do it tomorrow or the day after. And then once I sort all of the Seagal podcasts that have been reinstated, I do have one more. I think I have one more big Seagal podcast to do as well before we finish the most comprehensive Seagal saga in the history of existence, in what is possibly the most accomplished human being in the history of existence. So I hope everybody enjoyed another edition of the Mindshock Logic Olympics. If you enjoy the podcast, want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.